In Syria, a third bomb blast has reportedly rocked the city of iDLib, just hours after 8 were killed and dozens wounded in twin explosions there. The government and the opposition both blaming each other for orchestrating the attacks. Now, the United Nations warns the ongoing violence threatens the peace plan it helped to broker. The head of the expanding UN observer mission to Syria says the roadmap is futile unless all sides observe a ceasefire. Meanwhile, Damascus is preparing to hold nationwide parliamentary elections in just a week's time, but the US and its allies are still calling for regime change. Jordan-based Professor Ibrahim Alloush thinks Syria fell out of favour for playing by its own rules.
I think they are trying to destabilize and overthrow an independent regime and have it replaced by a regime that is friendly to the interests of NATO. And this has ramifications that extend far beyond the boundaries of Syria. They have regional impact and international impact in the geostrategic struggle with the rising states like Russia and China. So this is about destroying an independent state that has been relatively successful in building a semi-independent economic base that is dependent on agriculture and industry, manufacturing specifically, as opposed to being an importing state that is bound to debt from the IMF and the World Bank. They are not serious about peace in Syria. What they really want is to overthrow the regime. That's the end game.
Now, Damascus is preparing to hold nationwide parliamentary elections now in just a week's time. And some Syrian groups have chosen to put their faith in reform instead of violence, as RT's Oksana Boyko reports.
A cause pursued for decades, now accomplished in just a few months. Just a year ago, even speaking Kurdish in public could have got these people in trouble, but now they can proudly recite what some hope will become the anthem for their future state. The world's largest ethnic group without a nation, Kurds have long felt outsiders in their own lands. In Syria, where they make up around 10% of the population, Kurds have for decades complained of tacit discrimination by the authorities. In fact, they called on President Bashar al-Assad to step down years before it became the rallying cry of the Syrian opposition. Despite long-running grievances against the Assad family, Syrian Kurds have largely stayed out of this conflict. In fact, if there is any group that benefited from the instability in Syria, it must be them. Over the past year, Syrian Kurds won more concessions from the authorities than in 2 decades before that. This Kurdish language school is one of about a dozen that have opened their doors in Syria over the past few months. Here, grandmothers share desks with grandchildren in a determined attempt to learn the classic version of their mother tongue. The school's principal says just a year ago it had to be done in secret.
The state didn't allow any instruction in Kurdish. We used to be told that since we are living in an Arab country, we should speak Arabic. Books, even songs in Kurdish, were all forbidden, but nowadays it all has changed.
It's not only Syria where Kurds felt pressured. In Turkey, Iraq and Iran, where the majority of about 40 million Kurds now live, the authorities had long seen them as a threat to national security, especially after they embraced guerrilla warfare to achieve the creation of a sovereign Kurdish state. And in Syria these days, it seems, this goal has been realized, at least for now. About a month ago, Kurds living in Aleppo opened their own version of a city hall. Here, the portrait of Abdullah Öcalan, the face of the Kurdish independence struggle, hangs where you would usually expect a picture of the president.
We, the Kurds, are neither with the government nor with the opposition. We stand alone. The Syrian state has bigger problems, so we're taking charge of our areas and trying to govern ourselves.
For the time being, Syrian Kurds claim that self-governance and equal rights are all they want. Some say an autonomy within Syria, similar to the Kurdistan region of Iraq, would be a more realistic alternative to full-fledged independence.
Syrian Kurds don't want a separate state. We want to live in Syria in peace with the Arabs, Christians, and everybody else. But we do want to be treated equally and to be recognized as the Kurds on our IDs, not as Syrian Arabs.
Yet dozens of Kurdish settlements within Syria have already become de facto mini-sovereign states. They're not only self-governed, but self-policed as well. There are well-defined borders, like these checkpoints separating Kurdish and Arab parts of town, and volunteer border guards.
The regime is now distracted with its own struggle, so we seized on the opportunity.
Patience is bitter, but it bears sweet fruit. This old Kurdish proverb is frequently cited in Syria these days. But what's unclear is how long this newfound independence may last. Oksana Boyko, RT, Aleppo, Syria.